We're spending billions of dollars on infrastructure for technology we can't trust with our adversaries, while those same adversaries exploit that technology's overconfidence to manipulate our politics. Meanwhile, we're debating whether to regulate systems that advanced too head-spinningly fast to govern and scrambling to teach our most sophisticated AI models the ancient wisdom of admitting ignorance. Welcome to 2025, where our smartest machines exhibit the intellectual humility of a freshman philosophy student after their first semester. Now, 5 developments from this month show us a profound crisis at the heart of artificial intelligence. The gap between confidence and competence, between capability and understanding, between what these systems can do and what they actually know. On June 6th, Reuters reported that the multi-billion-dollar US-UAE AI data campus deal that everyone was talking about recently remains stalled due to persistent security concerns. Now, despite Trump's announcement of a massive AI partnership with the UAE, including plans for the largest AI campus outside the US, officials are still fairly cautious about the UAE's relationships with China and with Russia. The planned 10-square-mile site funded by UAE's state-linked tech firm G42 would house advanced NVIDIA AI chips and be operated by American companies. Yet sources reveal the U.S. administration has no clear timeline for finalizing the deal. It's just words for now. And they have special requirements here for yet-to-be-defined controls on technology and restrictions on Chinese involvement. They still have no idea what they're doing. The day before, on June 5th, Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei published a New York Times op-ed opposing a Republican proposal to ban state AI regulation for 10 years. Amodei called the moratorium, quote-unquote, too blunt an instrument, basically arguing that AI is advancing way too head-spinningly fast for such blanket policies. Instead, he basically advocated for more federal transparency standards, demanding that AI companies be required to disclose their safety testing practices, and warning that without clear federal responses, a moratorium would create basically the worst of both worlds, where you have no ability for states to act and no national policy as a backstop. Now, that same day, OpenAI released a report revealing increasing numbers of Chinese groups using ChatGPT for covert ops. The report basically details how Chinese actors generated social media posts supporting both sides of divisive U.S. political topics, criticizing and praising Trump's tariffs, U.S. aid funding cuts, and a host of other contentious issues. One operation, dubbed Sneer Review, used ChatGPT to create false impressions of organic engagement by generating posts and their own supporting comments. Now, most remarkably, these groups used ChatGPT to write internal performance reviews describing their own influence operations, treating the AI as both tool and somewhat unwitting accomplice. Now, 3 days earlier, TechCrunch published an interview with Lattice CEO Sarah Franklin. And in that interview, she emphasized that humans must provide, quote-unquote, necessary checks and balances for AI systems. Franklin, whose $3 billion employee performance company, has basically integrated AI features and insisted that human connection cannot be replaced. Successful companies will, according to her, be the ones who learn how to put people first. Slight irony here, but her company has built AI HR agents and platforms for custom business agents. But Franklin still was somewhat adamant about human oversight. It's a way to just have the regular checks and balances that we're used to in our workforce, she said. Now, on June 3rd, MIT News reported on Themis AI, a spinout founded by MIT professor Daniela Rus, to basically address what researchers call the hallucination crisis. Now, Themis AI's CAPTCHA platform specifically teaches AI models to quantify their own uncertainty and admit when they're unsure. As co-founder Alexander Amini explained, quote, "We've all seen examples of AI hallucinating or making mistakes. As AI is deployed more broadly, those mistakes could lead to some devastating consequences. Themis makes it possible that any AI can forecast and predict its own failures before they happen," end quote. Now, all of these developments together, they all converge around a fundamental philosophical crisis. We've created systems that exhibit perfect confidence in imperfect knowledge. And we're building our digital infrastructures, our world, on this foundation of algorithmic overconfidence. 2,500 years ago, a little-known philosopher named Socrates, wandered the streets of Athens doing something that got him into so much trouble they eventually forced him to kill himself. He asked people what they actually knew. Socrates would approach respected experts, politicians, craftsmen, religious leaders, you name it, and through careful questioning, his Socratic method, he would show that they didn't really understand the fundamental concepts that they claimed to master. A general who spoke confidently about courage couldn't actually articulate or define what courage was. A priest who preached about justice couldn't explain what made something just. Now, Socrates discovered something remarkable. The people who claimed to know the most often understood the least, while those who admitted ignorance were more positioned to learn. And this led him to basically come to his famous declaration, "I know that I know nothing," which wasn't necessarily a form of self-deprecation, but revolutionary insight. See, Socrates, he realized that recognizing the limits of your knowledge is actually the best starting point for real, genuine understanding. Now, this approach, known as Socratic wisdom, creates several powerful advantages. First, it reduces the likelihood of being overconfident or making overconfident decisions based on incomplete information. Second, it encourages asking better questions rather than just accepting superficial answers. And third, it creates space for genuine learning by actually admitting when you need more information. Now, most importantly, it actually distinguishes between feeling certain and actually being correct. A real interesting distinction that can prevent catastrophic errors in high-stakes situations. I think you see where I'm going here. Today's AI systems embody the opposite approach. They generate responses with unwavering confidence, regardless of their actual knowledge. When Chinese groups ask ChatGPT to generate political content, it listens, complies with equal enthusiasm, whether discussing verifiable facts or complete fabrications. When researchers test AI models on basic geography, they confidently list Kazakhstan as bordering Mongolia, a relationship that only exists in algorithmic imaginations. This overconfidence creates what psychologists call the Dunning-Kruger effect at scale. The original research showed that people with limited knowledge in a domain often overestimate their competence precisely because they lack the knowledge to recognize their limitations. AI systems exhibit this pattern systematically. They generate confident responses in domains where they have insufficient training data, inadequate reasoning capabilities, or fundamental knowledge gaps. Now, the implications extend far beyond technical performance to questions of democratic governance and social trust. When Dario argues that AI advances too head-spinningly fast for regulatory frameworks, he's actually acknowledging a profound challenge to democratic institutions. How do we govern technologies that evolve faster than our capacity to understand them? How do we establish democratic oversight over systems that operate beyond the comprehension of elected officials? Now, the UAE deal highlights this challenge perfectly. We're making multi-billion-dollar infrastructure bets based on technologies whose capabilities and risks we're still discovering. Security concerns that stall the deal reflect deeper uncertainties about AI systems themselves, their vulnerabilities, their potential for misuse, their long-term implications for national security. I think for business leaders, for investors, these developments reveal the hidden costs of AI overconfidence. Companies building on AI foundations need to account for systems that confidently deliver incorrect information, that can be manipulated by adversaries, and that might actually require a constant human vigilance, some oversight, despite promises of automation. Now, the most successful companies, like Lattice's Sarah Franklin suggests, will be those that maintain human judgment alongside AI capabilities. Now, the Chinese exploitation of ChatGPT also shows us how overconfident systems become vectors for geopolitical manipulation. When AI systems lack genuine understanding of the content they generate, they become perfect tools for influence operations that exploit their willingness to argue any position with equal conviction. The fact that Chinese groups used ChatGPT to document their own operations shows us how these systems can become actual unwitting participants in their own exploitation. Now, MIT's Themis AI represents a very crucial counter approach, building epistemic humility into AI systems. Basically, teaching machines to say, "I don't know," might seem like a step backwards, but it actually addresses a real fundamental flaw in current AI development. Systems that actually acknowledge uncertainty enable better human decision-making, more robust safety mechanisms, and actually more trustworthy automation. And so this brings us to the central paradox of our AI moment. The most advanced features of these systems, their ability to generate confident, comprehensive responses to any query, might actually also be their most dangerous characteristics. We've consistently optimized for fluency over accuracy, confidence over humility, and persuasiveness over truth. And the path forward here requires us to recognize that intelligence and wisdom are two completely different qualities. Intelligence involves processing information quickly and coming up with responses efficiently. Wisdom involves understanding the limits of your knowledge, acknowledging uncertainty, and making sound judgments despite incomplete information. An analogy I love to use sometimes is there's a difference between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is knowing that a tomato is a fruit. And wisdom is the sense to know that it doesn't belong in a fruit salad. Now, salads aside, current AI systems actually exhibit remarkable intelligence but profound deficits in wisdom. They process vast amounts of information but still struggle to distinguish reliable knowledge from educated guesses. They generate sophisticated responses but still can't assess the confidence intervals around their outputs. They optimize for things like user satisfaction, but have no way to judge whether or not tasks are beyond their competence. Now, as we build AI infrastructure worth billions of dollars, as we debate regulatory frameworks for systems we barely understand, and as we basically reveal new ways these systems can be exploited, we need to start grappling with a real fundamental question. Do we want artificial intelligence or artificial wisdom? And the answer to that will determine whether AI systems become tools that enhance human judgment or replace it, whether they strengthen democratic institutions or undermine them, and whether they create new forms of knowledge or new forms of sophisticated ignorance. And as we stand at this sort of inflection point, this crossroads between AI and artificial wisdom, perhaps the most important question we can ask ourselves is this. In a world where machines can generate confident answers to any question, will we remember the value of admitting when we don't know? Thank you for listening to Last Nasty, Brutish, and Short. Your human engagement with these ideas matters way more than you might realize. I'm Michael Cuenca. I'll see you next week.